I really appreciate your participation with the Build Out live stream every Wednesday at noon Eastern Daylight Time, exclusively here on LinkedIn. The stream will be starting in just 1 minute. In the meantime, let me take this opportunity to talk to you about the live streaming studio that I use to stream Build Out with Jim Kunkel. StreamYard is a live streaming browser-based studio that allows you to interview guests, share your screen, and much more. With StreamYard, you can multi-stream directly to your website, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and for those who qualify, live stream here on LinkedIn. So now's the time to start live streaming. In the event post and on the video description is a referral link for a $10 credit when you become a paid subscriber to StreamYard. Today, my guest is Rolf Snobeck from Tecta America Commercial Roofing. Rolf and I will have a conversation on grow your team, grow your business. Okay, let's get this build-out conversation started. Hey everyone, welcome to an all-new build-out live stream. Joining me today is my guest, Rolf Snobeck. Rolf, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
I appreciate having you too. You and I have had a lot of, we'll get Rolf back here in a second. We're going to have a discussion on build your team and to grow your business. So let's just hold on for a second here and we'll try to get Rolf in here. In the meantime, let me run the agenda for today's conversation. We're going to have a discussion on build your team, grow your business. I'm also going to talk a little about an Oxford economic study in conjunction with SAP, Workforce 2020, video review regarding how to write a professional development plan. And also, we're going to be talking about how to improve your team management and grow your business. Rolf, welcome back.
Sorry about that. A little technical issue there.
Hey, it happens. No big problem. Hey, before we get into our conversation regarding, grow your team, build your team, grow your business, could you provide a little bit of background, your professional background, and what you do in the industry?
Sure. And Jim, thanks once again for having me on. So, a little bit of a brief background on Rolf and what he's all about. I've been in the roofing industry for 43 years. I tell people all the time there's three sides to the roofing industry. There's the construction side, the design side, the architects, the engineers, consultants, and the supplier side. I've had the benefit of, I spent 17 years on the design side of the fence, and the last 26 years I've been on the construction side, actually building stuff. So it's given me a unique perspective. I'd like to think that I've learned a lot over the years. So, what does that mean? Right now, I like to think that I help people make better roofing decisions. Typically, people I work with, they might be frustrated. They have a roof that isn't lasting as long as it should. They're worried, especially today, are they meeting their sustainability and recycling goals? And so I help people with that. But really the purpose of what we want to talk about today is folks that might be concerned about, are they not achieving their growth goals within their industry? And we can talk through some of those things, maybe provide some tips for people to run their business better. And to get back to the title here is people want to grow their business. And part of that is to build the right team and how to do that. So we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. With, everything going on right now, especially when there is what seems to be in some cases a scarcity of qualified people to be able to do a lot of different roles within companies. This is a great topic to kind of cover. And for the viewers, just so everyone knows, Rolf and I, I think, Rolf, you have probably more extensive training in the Sandler selling system than I do. I've done about 4 years. But, in your everyday professional life, you are employing a lot of aspects related to Sandler. And then the other things that you do is that you are a continuous improvement person where you're always learning. Like you said, you have all these years of experience in the roofing industry, both commercial, industrial side, on the construction side of it, but you also have a lot related to the professional side when it comes to project management, business development, sales, marketing, and things like that. I encourage everyone to check out Rolf's profile. There's a lot of useful videos that he also puts out as well. And is there anything else that I didn't mention what you do regarding your professional advice to people?
Sure, and you bring up good points. So I've been I'll say a Sandler disciple now for about 25 years. A lot of people say, why do you keep going to class? Because I learn something every week. So it doesn't matter how old you are, there's always something more to learn. And the other thing is, I'm a member of IBEC, International Institute of Building and Enclosure Consultants, and a registered roof consultant there. So I go to class every year to stay current on what's happening on the industry. So no matter what your vocation is, I happen to be in the roofing world, but if you're in the coatings world or the florist world, I don't care. You want to keep learning and be the best in your industry. So
yeah, definitely. And obviously, your background is in commercial industrial roofing, but the concepts and the topics that we're going to be covering today can apply to any industry. And that's something for everyone to take away from this. I'll be talking shortly about the Workforce 2020, which is an Oxford economic study in conjunction with SAP, and go through that report and what were some of the findings that were done pre-pandemic. This was done well prior to 2020. But, when we really look at if you want to build your team, and we're talking about the training and professional development, what are some of the recommended, let's say, for example, related to business development, what are some of the training and development opportunities that companies and organizations should take advantage of? Do you recommend?
So we mentioned as far as business development and learning how to be better at the craft of working with people. Sandler is a methodology that can be used. There are others. I've worked with some of the others too. They all have attributes. I'm a personal fan of Sandler because I think they have some features that other programs may or may not have. But it doesn't mean you should limit yourself to that. But to take a step back, there's some other things maybe to consider. Businesses tend to think, or owners of businesses say, well, I'm going to hire a person in a sales role and they're going to go out and sell. And it doesn't work. And the question is why? And there's a variety of books that I've read and things that I've studied over the years. If you just plant somebody out in the field and say go forth and do, they won't, because they don't understand. So a couple of things need to happen. First of all, the company has to have clear, explicit goals of what it's going to achieve this quarter, this year, next 3 years, next 10 years. And what I would say is at every meeting, the manager at that meeting has to start out and reiterate what the goals are. You don't, hey, it's January 2nd, we're having the kickoff meeting for the year. Here's the goals. Now go forth, and we'll see you all here in 52 weeks at January 2nd of next year, and do the postmortem of why it didn't happen. I don't understand. We had the conversation on January 2nd. Everybody knew what the goal was. You have to keep repeating it every week, every meeting. And it may sound silly, but that way everybody in the organization is staying on target. Okay. You have to set goals on an employee basis of what they need to perform. What's their piece of that puzzle? In my world, it could be this. It's in the sales world. My role is to bring bookings in. But there's other people that help run projects. There's service that needs to be done. There's billing that needs to be done. All of these things that are part of it, every person in the company has to have what they do be linked to the company's goal and tied out as to a KPI. And we can talk about KPIs a little bit more. But at the end of the day, if you hire somebody, and I'm going to take this back into the sales world here for a second. If you have somebody that's in the sales world, they have to be there for a reason. This is the only vocation. Okay, let's say you're an accountant. It may be a long day. You may be buried. There might be deadlines and all that kind of good stuff. People might yell at you because the billing isn't done on time. Okay, but by and large, sales can be one of two things. The most rewarding thing you can do every once in a while, but more often than not, it's the one vocation you can have where you can have your teeth kicked in every day because you're calling people that don't want to talk to you. They're going with somebody else. There's always, the statistic is for every 100 people you talk to, 3 people need you. So that means you get 97 no's. So you got to be pretty thick-skinned. So if you're going to be in that vocation, you got to be there for a reason, okay? And one thing that, Jim, you and I talked about, I've got over here next to my desk my vision board. And I think you may have a copy there as well.
Yeah, just brought it up here.
And what that has, it has important things to me. The top line is my family, my faith, my exercise, how I start the day, and goals that I have during the year. And then down at the bottom, I would call them lottery goals. If I won the lottery, what am I going to do? Okay. Yeah. So as I'm having a typical day doing what I do, and I'm getting yelled at and screamed at, I can look at it and say, why am I doing this? And tie it back to something real. Because otherwise, that's the reason why a lot of, in my opinion, salespeople quit, because unless if you know what the goal is, it's a lot of abuse. So
yeah, definitely. In last week, I had Sam Navarro on from IPC Industries, and we were talking about strategic planning and strategic plans related to business development. And to kind of dovetail into our topic today is that you must have a strategic plan as much as you would have an annual goal that is communicated, that vision, and then also everyone would know exactly what role they're playing to meet that goal. And obviously what processes have to be done, how many people you need to talk to, what conversion rate you need to have, what the marketing messaging needs to be, what the support level from, let's say, on the product side or the services side, what needs to go into make that year successful, and then to continuously improve that, to do quality checks and things like that. So, having that strategic plan is super critical for you. And, trying to understand exactly where do you want to be in 3 years, 5 years, but also focus very intently and very, very strongly on that annual plan is very critical. Just before we move on, interesting question here for you, Rolf, to get your opinion on this.
Sure.
David had asked a question if you would be an advocate for protective coatings for the roofing industry. And then what are your thoughts on protective coatings, where they're at related to the roofing industry on the commercial and industrial side?
So my answer would be, I would be an advocate for that. However, it's just like any other roofing application. It has to be technically sound. Okay. You can put any roof membrane or any roof system on a building, and if it's not the right fit, it will not work. So if you're talking about a liquid applied coating solution in the roofing world, if it's technically not the right fit, it also will fail. If it is the right fit, it's a great solution. And as a sidebar right now, within the industry and within a lot of industries, there's huge supply chain issues where materials are just not available. So there are cases where the easy solution in the past would be, let's put a new membrane on that building. That can be anywhere from a 4 to 8 month lead time today. Yeah. So coatings, they're stretching out a little bit. It might take you 3-4 weeks to get a liquid applied solution, but it is, if it's technically feasible and somebody needs a roof this year, yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it comes down to doing the proper assessment, and then obviously you want to make sure that the prep is done properly, and then you do hire a qualified contractor to do the work. So there's a lot of variables that go into it, but it is a way. And I know, my previous life, back in the early 2000s when I worked for a commercial and industrial roofing systems provider, coatings at that time were very, very popular for the company, but the technologies advanced in those coatings to a very high level. And so it's a much different time now than what it was, let's say 10, 15 years ago, when those type of coating systems for roofing systems started to come out. So I appreciate your perspective on the roofing coatings. Rolf, let's talk about the Workforce 2020 study, which was conducted by Oxford Economics and also by SAP. Well, prior to 2020, SAP went out to about 2,700 employees and 2,700 executives. They also did this over 27 different countries. So they seem that they nailed the proper mixture when it comes to having an effective survey. And from the survey, they had really found some very interesting things. And as they phrase it, the looming talent crisis. And we're in that right now. We're seeing that happen and manifest right now, post-pandemic. But what was interesting from the study, 83% of the executives that were surveyed said that they plan to increase their use of consultant employees past 2020 to compensate for the loss of talent. Now, workforce development is critical in that process of having a good workforce for you. I'm not saying that an organization shouldn't rely on consultants to come in, but for some companies in some industries, that might not be the most appropriate approach. Do you agree with that?
Let's take this a step back to what we were talking about before, because I think it ties together. Okay, we talked about the vision board, and you talked a little bit about last week's guest, and in essence, there's a KPI. What's your activity to what your end goal is? Okay, the part that's missing, and how does a business grow their business by building their team? The manager that has to do regular reviews for the employees and actually review with them. Hey, the goals that you have over here, you needed to have certain behaviors to get there. We're on track or we're not on track. Okay. And so I think employees, how do you get them out of a contract basis and then on an employee basis? If that person understands that their manager knows what makes them tick and cares about them and can tie their behaviors to end results, I think that's, I don't know if that answers your question, but it might help bridge that gap between contract employees and people actually coming to work for you.
Yeah, it definitely does. Another finding with the study was that HR departments seem to have a lack of metrics when it comes to the development strategies. From reading the results, it sounds like companies and organizations are great at putting in development plans for staff, but they're not really gauging the effectiveness of it. So what they do is they seem to put a Band-Aid on it. We're going to have this level of training across the year for these different profiles of employees. Could be at marketing, sales, production, whatever department you're in, but they're not adequately gauging through KPIs and working that back in to adjust a plan. What is successful? Is it really working what we're doing? And I hate to say it, it sounds like in a way they're kind of, HR is checking off the box. So it sounds like there has to be an evolution when it comes to HR departments as well for companies and organizations.
Right. And what you just laid out makes sense. And particularly if there's a training, hey, we're going to have training for this subject and that subject. We check the box, we're done. People walk out of any training and for the first couple of days, week, 10 days, they're rah, rah, rah. Hey, that was really great. And then it's forgotten. So it has to be consistent. You don't have to put people in a room for 5 days once a year, but put people in a room for an hour every week, so that it builds and people remember, and your bench strength improves. Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just lost in space. So.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the study found that companies who prioritize workforce development or create a culture of professional learning, they produce an above-average annual revenue. So the ROI, according to SAP and Oxford Economics, is that the proof is there when companies really take a active and then a structured approach, but make sure that they have mechanisms built in to qualify the success, and then also to figure out exactly how does this impact our business, and then where do we need to make changes when it comes to professional development, team training, and things like that. The other thing this study really found is the millennial misunderstanding. On top of this talent issue, when it comes to having staffing, we also have a generational challenge that is definitely here on us. And, some of the things that it put out here was that, millennials care more about making a positive difference in the world through their work.
Mm-hmm.
They want to achieve a work-life balance. It's very important to them.
Mm-hmm.
Finding personal meaning in their work is more important to millennials, and meeting income goals is less important to millennials as long as they're learning and growing. So we see kind of a shift. I'm 55. My mindset has always been, you want to make the most amount of money you can, and that allows all type of things to happen. But with millennials, it's not about the money. It's about exactly for themselves. Are they growing? Are they learning? Are they developing? So I think, looking at these professional development plans is critical to attract millennials and get the younger generation, obviously, to participate and to help your company or organization grow.
And that all makes sense to me, and it ties back. I'm going to keep going back to this vision board. My vision of the world and Jim's vision of the world might be different from a millennial's vision of the world. Mm-hmm. We're all working for different reasons, and as long as the employer and the employee know what the company's goals are and how to achieve them, and have the employee be content with their vocation, they're helping the world, whatever the case may be, everybody wins. Okay, but you have to have that huddle up on the periodic basis so that the people understand each other. Okay, the other point that you made, and I will say that I use this as my credo, it's the rule of 3 and 2. Mm-hmm. It's nothing I came up with. Bill Bartlett, one of my coaches, shared this with me, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. The rule of 3 and 2. Every day you get up and you have 3 professional goals that you're going to accomplish, and you write them down, and 2 personal goals. Okay? We all have 50 things that we could work on any given day. You can't get through them all. And if you put them all on a list, at the end of the day, you'll work 16 hours, you won't get through the 50, and you will feel like you failed. So keep your life in balance. 3 professional, 2 personal. Do them. If you have time for other things, that's great. Through the pandemic, it's probably 5 and 2 at this point. But the principle is there. You have to keep your life in balance between professional and personal.
Now, the study also found a little bit of difference, obviously, between the let's say the boomers and the millennials, and what really came out of it for executives, especially, they value loyalty more than job performance, and that really can be problematic. If you are playing favorites versus really looking at job performance. Job performance is a key indicator of, a staff or an employee's commitment to the company, the organization, but also to something that might be lacking in professional development that needs to be addressed. So, executives really need to focus more on the job performance. And then another thing, too, I wanted to point out here, when the difference between the boomers and millennials, and the study kind of, let's say on an average said it, it was more important attraction and retention benefit for employees was compensation. So it seems like, at least in the study, compensation still was really kind of outranking what the millennials were saying when it comes to more like job satisfaction and job participation and things like that. 39% of executives say their company offers competitive compensation. Other corporate offerings often fail to match up with employee preference. And then they said they were satisfied with their jobs. So, it sounds like the executives have a different mindset than when it comes to the regular staff, let's say, and professional staff. Another thing that study found is what's called a leadership cliff. There are gaps in leadership capabilities, and obviously that spells trouble for the future of companies and organizations. I've participated in a lot of different types of leadership training. And I'm sure you have as well. Mm-hmm. It's very, very beneficial. But is it put into practice? Is it, again, back to the KPIs? Is it being specifically measured to make sure that leadership is effective and also really benefiting the future growth of the company or the organization? When it comes to leadership training, is there any additional information that you have or recommendations?
Well, you said something I'm kind of curious about, and I don't know if the study addressed this. You said a leadership cliff. So is that to imply that people are going to retire out? There's nobody following, or is there nobody following, or is the next generation not being developed?
It's actually both. The aspect of, obviously we have a lot of leadership that tends to be on the scale, let's say on the range of the boomer side, and they are retiring. Obviously, we've seen with the pandemic, a lot of people did decide to kind of just get out of their professions. A lot of people reinvented themselves too during the pandemic. So now all of a sudden you have, according to the study, it was looming back in pre-2020 going into this study. Now it's intensified. So there is that issue related to leadership, and then also the cultivation of younger professionals for future leadership.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, on the construction end of the world, we see that. We work with some firms that had, I would say, very robust construction engineering departments. In the last 10 years, lots of people with 30, 40, and 50 years of experience retired and walked out. And there's nobody behind them. So we're challenged with trying to run projects, and rather than the owner formally telling us how they want us to build something, we have to explain, we can't do what you think you want done, because there's nobody on the staff. So I see that as being a huge challenge overall.
Yeah, because in the survey when it was done related to the executives, only 44% of them responded that they have succession planning and actually have an active succession plan to cultivate younger professionals to assume and to step up into leadership roles. So, like I say, prior to the pandemic going into this with this type of a result, it does add to a lot of problems and also challenges moving forward. And then the other thing the study pointed out, the learning mandate, there is a gap between professional development, leadership development, and it highly recommends that in order for you to really grow your business, grow your company, you need to really invest in your people when it comes to the training and development of them. And then also, too, that equals a higher productivity. It produces a higher engagement and innovation internally. Again, you're in an industry. I work for an association. What's the next thing? What's the next thing that come out of your company, my organization? Those are things that need to be cultivated, and that's going to come from, probably most cases, grassroots, either from the industry or it's going to come internally from your company or organization. And then the other thing too is, with people development, with employee development, helps retain the best employees. And I think a lot of people when we're talking about the millennials, again, they're looking at, what am I contributing? Am I appreciated for what I'm contributing? But I want to do more. I want to learn more. So, now this is an opportunity for companies to really look inward and say, do we have the proper professional development plan? And then go through the process of developing that if they don't have it. And now is the time is now.
Right. No, I couldn't agree more. And the other thing I think companies need to look at, and there's tests that you can do. The names escape me right now, but as far as making sure you got the right person in the right position, okay. And before and I think that would be one of the first steps as you're considering hiring somebody, is to go through a battery of tests and determine what's their personality like. And make sure they're put into the right place. I go back in time here about 30 years ago. A company I worked for, they gave everybody the Wonderlic test, and basically the whole purpose of that was to determine how quickly you could make decisions. Mm-hmm. Not that you were smart or not, but there were some high stress positions where you're making decisions every 30 seconds. Okay, if you can't do that, this is a great person. This is not the place for them over here, for instance. Okay. Yeah. And I think professional development is important, but you got to make sure you're doing that professional development with the right person that's in the right seat on the bus.
Definitely. Some of the tests that I've done is strength finders, also DISC So you have different types of testings out there when it comes to professional personalities. Also, personally, where your strengths and weaknesses are. So, like you said, you might have somebody who is in a high stress job who really should not be in that job. For me, for example, I'm a people person. I like to talk on the phone more than through email. And the other thing too is I like being in the field. I like meeting people, talking to people. I never shut up. I get accused of that. And
I'm shocked.
put me behind a desk, where I don't have that interaction, it's not well suited for me. So again, that goes back to the level of satisfaction, and then also effectively, am I being used properly?
Right, and you mentioned that, and I've taken the DISC test. I'm sure a lot of other people do. It measures your personality, or are you a dominant, an influencer, whatever the case may be. But the other thing is, how do you process information? Are you a visual? Do you visually see something and your brain connects? Do you hear it? Or a kinesthetic gut instinct? Do you just have an innate feel for something? Okay, like you, Jim, I have to go out in the field and see it. Okay, if there's a problem on a project, or we're trying to figure out how to build something, if I can go out and see that building in 3D, I can visualize what needs to be done. Finding the solution's really easy. If somebody calls me over the phone and tells me what the problem is, it goes in one ear and out the other. Okay. Now, if my wife was sitting here, she's an auditory. Every word that gets said, she remembers. So it's all a function of how our brain processes information. So,
yeah, definitely. People are very different. No one's exactly the same. Rolf, if you could hold on, what I'm going to do is I have a video review that I did, and the link is in the post comments. And it's on how to write a professional development plan. And the link takes you to indeed.com. And it's for those out there that are looking at really write a development plan when it comes to professional staff and everything like that. So hold on 1 second, and I'll see you on the other side here.
You got it.
I hope that you're finding value in today's stream with Rolf on grow your team, grow your business. In researching today's stream topic, I came across an informative blog from Indeed.com titled, How to Write a Professional Development Plan. The blog provided some very useful insights on what a professional development plan is and what should be included in a written professional development plan. A professional development plan is essentially a list of actionable steps for achieving employee career goals. Now, Indeed.com offered 5 steps to create a simple but thorough professional development plan that includes self-assessments to evaluate your professional interest, knowledge, and skills. Goals. Setting SMART goals will make them trackable. Strategies. To define how you will achieve your goals. Resources. These are sources that aid in professional development, such as workshops and networking events. Timelines. You'll need to establish milestones, but to keep in mind, the professional development plan will always be a work in progress. The Indeed.com blog is very informative, and I'll post a link to the blog in the stream's comments, as well in the video description when this stream's recording goes up onto my YouTube channel. Okay, now back to Rolf to finish today's stream conversation on grow your team, grow your business. So for our final topic, we're going to cover how to improve team management and grow your business. So I think it's a perfect move from our previous 2 topics we went. And, these are recommendations that I found from Entrepreneur Magazine, and as they call it, their handbook recommendations. And the first focus, there's 5 focuses, is to promote a culture of psychological safety. And what they went into detail about was more related to having an open communication process, so that if someone says, I'm having a challenge, I'm having issues, that they can go ahead and speak and not be fearful of any repercussions or adverse actions that might happen to them. And I think that's really critical for people to say, if you see something, say something. If you feel something, say something. And it really helps a company really show the value that they have for the staff, but also too, the importance of the staff to be contributing within the company. I have seen in the past challenges related to this aspect of psychological safety. Recently, I think things are much better now in a lot of companies and organizations when it comes to this. What do you say when it comes to the aspect of psychological safety in the workplace?
I think this kind of ties back to what we've been talking about in that traditionally people have just employers have hired people and put them out in the field and said, go fend for yourself.
Yeah.
By tying the company's goals to the employee's personal aspirations and having those regular reviews, it's like, here's what we want to accomplish. Here's the things you need to do to accomplish your goals and how it fits together. That makes sense. I don't know how I want to put this, but they're not being bludgeoned for not meeting a sales goal per se, but you mentioned in the video about making periodic adjustments. Okay, we had a plan on January 2nd. Okay, now it's February 15th, and we're not achieving where we were. We're not here to browbeat. We are here to figure out how to adjust the plan to get you on track.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's what your thought process was, but that's what that means to me, is that we're working as a team, employer and employee, to where everybody achieves their goal at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think in the blog from Indeed.com, they were really focused on the aspect of it's a partnership in most companies and organizations between not only the employer and the employee, but ultimately it will go back to the customer as well. It's that type of a relationship, that type of a partnership. And to your point, you really want to have, and it's a recommendation again here from Entrepreneur, to have an active feedback mechanism. You want to be able to communicate. It could be a phone call, it could be email, it could be even a suggestion box, and it could be private, it could be, confidential, or it could be open forum. So you really want to have that mechanism in place to be able to provide that type of feedback, because it really does help continuous improvement. I've done Kaizen training. There's Six Sigma. There's all these different things that I've gone through, and they really benefited me, because you start to understand exactly how things work. But also too, there are ways to kind of, to your point, correct the course if the ship goes, let's say, too far to the port side or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to kind of right the ship and get it back on course and everything like that. How important for example, in the commercial and industrial roofing industry is a feedback mechanism?
Well, I think it would be important, because if you go down the road fat and happy, everything is fine, everybody's happy, then you don't know why you've been fired. I don't mean to be so glib about that. Okay, but I think, and you mentioned Kaizen. We've had clients that employ Kaizen, and at the end of the first year, they sit you down and you say, here's all the things that you're doing right, the things you're doing wrong. Here's where you need to, definitely need to fix this stuff. And a year later, where it was eye-opening for us, we came back for the next session, and everything they talked about has been remediated. We have it down to an art, and we think, this is going to be great. And they said, yeah, okay, but all that stuff, you've addressed these, but you can make incremental improvements in all these other places. So it's not just a matter of fix it once and you're done, but to your point, continual improvement. No matter where you're at, you can always do better.
Definitely. And the third recommendation from entrepreneurs is to make collaboration easy. We know that's going to benefit an organization and a company. Number 4, be transparent. I think transparency is really critical. It really does help, especially with the millennials who are really looking to be more involved. They want to be more involved sometimes in even the decisions with the business itself. But it also helps because it gets people engaged. And also, if you're looking for that succession planning, or you're looking for career development and a pathway from someone to go from an entry level and become one day the chief executive officer of the company. And we've seen in history people rise up from a entry level all the way to running a company or breaking away and starting their own company and becoming a big success or an innovator in different industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe that's, I'll throw out one other thing, is that when people have meetings, it's a senior manager and the lowliest employee. There has to be what I'd call an upfront contract when they sit down and have a review meeting where both parties have permission respectfully to say what's right and what's wrong and to point out what the other party needs to improve on.
Definitely.
I don't know if that makes sense, because if people don't think they can speak freely, they're not going to speak. They get frustrated and leave. And if everybody doesn't speak freely and absorb the information, not to be yelling at somebody, but to get information on the table, improvement doesn't happen.
Yeah, and it can also create a situation where you have everyone internally, they're really not looking at things in a positive way. It's a lot of negative, and it feeds on itself. So it can be really self-defeating for a company and organization. And then the last recommendation they have, which is something that also showed up in the survey that was done by Oxford Economics and SAP, appreciate your employees with rewards. Again, focusing on where the millennials are not so interested in, let's say, compensation, but they want to be able to be recognized for their contributions. Friends of mine had worked at a company where they would they hit their goal during the obviously seasonal. They would have activities come to the campus. So maybe they will do a small mini fair, or they'll do an Oktoberfest. And those are things that were done to help really appreciate the employees, where it wasn't about compensation. It was about fun activities. Mm-hmm. It was about rewards and other things like that. And, a lot of those can help strengthen the belief within a staff person, employee, to say, I want to stay here and I want to help this company grow, because look how well we're treated, and also too how much we're appreciated. And that's a positive impact on a staff or an employee looking at a company or organization. Have you, in your experience, either with your company or other companies, seen rewards that are done for appreciation?
Yeah, and I got to tell you, and this goes back, and every company is a little bit different, and things always evolve and morph a little bit. But I go back to when I started here. I worked for a local roofing company here in Chicago, Anthony Roofing, which was acquired by Tecta. But before Tecta acquired the company, the owner, every year at Christmas we had it was as good as a wedding reception. That type of environment, band. All the employees and their spouses were invited for the evening, and every employee was recognized personally by Joel, the owner of the company, for a contribution they made, where he called you up on the stage and went through. So everybody felt special, and it could have been the guy that's working in the warehouse sweeping the floor to the foreman that had the most productive crew, whatever the case may be. The accountant, didn't matter. Everybody makes a contribution, and he took the time to show that. That was a little bit different. Small company, you can do those things. It tends to become a little more problematical when you got 4,000 employees. But everybody felt good at the end of that, and they were ready to dive in for the next year. So that's the point.
Yeah, there's a lot of good recommendations out there. If you go for appreciations that can be done, I remember, when I worked for the National Roofing Company, I ran the telemarketing team. We did all the pre-sales up to the point of the sales rep going out and actually meeting with the client with a proposal. We did lottery scratch tickets. We did all types of little spiffs and things like that. We did little half day off and things like that, depending on, again, what the goal was, what we were looking to achieve. If we hit it, then we had some rewards based in, and it really did help have people focused on their job. And it made it not a grind. It actually made it quite enjoyable. At the end of the day, maybe they get a couple scratch-off tickets, and then maybe they hit for a couple $100 or something like that. So there's a lot of different ideas and recommendations out there. Mm-hmm. Rolf, before we close out this stream, I wanted to introduce next week's guest. Next week, and you know Beckie Hayes very well. Beckie Hayes will be joining the stream next Wednesday at noon. We're going to talk about healthy conflict in business. And we kind of say, well, how can there be healthy conflict? There is such a thing as healthy conflict, and Beckie and I are going to have a great conversation on that. So looking forward to next week.
Very good. And I've known Beckie for years. She'll be a phenomenal guest. I encourage everybody to tune in next week. So
Perfect.
And if I may, can I throw out a couple of things here?
Oh, definitely.
So I had a stack of books here. So Beckie and I, we make recommendations to each other for books to read. So she's probably going to talk about this next week, Traction.
Okay.
And The Four Obsessions of an Executive. Those are a couple of books I would encourage people to read. And then along the sales training thing and stuff, a couple of other books, The Success Cadence, Scaling Sales Success, and The Sale Coach's Playbook. These are all books that if you're in the world I'm in and you're trying to grow your business, those are gold.
Definitely. And obviously you and I recommend Sandler selling system. That's a great training if you're in business development and sales. And it's something that can really be put in the application in the field. Good stuff there. Rolf, if anyone would want to get in contact with you, should they go through LinkedIn, or do you have an email address?
Yeah, people can reach out to me. Cell phone is 630-514-1867. If you wanted to reach out to me via email, it's rsnobeck, so RSNOBECK at tectaamerica.com. Or follow me at # Rolf the Roofing Guy at LinkedIn, YouTube, or Rumble.
Definitely. And check out his profile. Contact information that he just mentioned is also on his LinkedIn profile as well. Rolf, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd want to leave? I know you did give your book recommendations. Is there anything we didn't talk about?
Well, we could keep talking forever, but I won't do that to you or to whoever's on. No, I think the one thing that was important and we didn't talk about is the rule of 3 and 2. Keep your life in balance. Work hard for a purpose, so at the end of the day you can enjoy time with your family or whatever trips your trigger. Okay.
And definitely for everyone, create that vision. Have that poster board, have those photos up again. What's your vision for the current period, for the year? That was a great recommendation that you had earlier in the stream.
You betcha.
Well, Rolf,
for having me,
hey. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity, and hopefully you and I can get together again on another stream on a different topic in the future.
Very well. I'll look you up next time I'm in Pittsburgh.
Excellent. Thank you. Hey, have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.